The sharp sting in my chest had nothing to do with the broken ribs. As the bright emergency room lights blurred above me and voices echoed through the chaos, one familiar pair of eyes stopped me colder than the pain ever could. For one impossible second, time folded in on itself, and I found myself wondering how life could carry two people so far apart only to throw them back together on the worst night imaginable. What would you do if the person you once loved without ever saying a word suddenly became the one trying to save your life? Would you pretend the past never happened, or would every forgotten feeling come rushing back before either of you had the chance to breathe? My name is Nathan, and I grew up in a quiet town in Ohio where dreams usually stayed smaller than the city limits. My father worked endless shifts repairing trucks, while my mother cleaned offices at night. We never had much, but we had enough love to survive. High school was never easy for someone like me. My clothes were always a little older than everyone else's, my shoes were worn down, and I spent most afternoons helping my father instead of joining football games or parties. Still, every morning became worth facing because there was one person who unknowingly gave color to my ordinary days. Her name was Rachel. She had gentle brown eyes, a quiet smile, and a kindness that somehow reached people without needing attention. She wasn't the loudest girl in school or the most popular, but everyone respected her because she treated every person with dignity. I admired her from a distance for 4 years, never finding enough courage to tell her how much simply seeing her made difficult days feel lighter. I convinced myself that someone like Rachel would never notice someone like me, so I buried those feelings and focused on surviving graduation. Life moved quickly after high school. College wasn't possible for me because my father suffered a serious back injury only months after graduation. I took whatever jobs I could find to help keep the family afloat. Construction, warehouse work, night security, delivery driving, anything that paid the bills became my future. My dreams slowly disappeared beneath rent, hospital bills, and responsibility. I occasionally wondered what happened to Rachel, but those thoughts faded with time as life demanded every ounce of energy I had. Years later I married a wonderful woman named Grace. She gave me a happiness I never expected, and together we welcomed a beautiful little daughter named Hannah. For a while life finally felt fair. We laughed more than we worried, and our tiny house became the safest place I had ever known. But happiness sometimes arrives with no promise of staying. Grace was diagnosed with an aggressive illness that spread faster than anyone expected. Despite every treatment and every prayer, she slipped away before Hannah turned 6 years old. The years after losing Grace became the darkest season of my life. I worked 2 jobs while raising Hannah alone. There were mornings when I barely remembered sleeping. Every decision felt heavy. Every birthday reminded me of who was missing. Yet my daughter somehow carried her mother's warmth inside her, reminding me every day that love never completely disappears. She became the reason I kept getting back up, even when my heart wanted to stay broken. One icy winter evening, after finishing a late delivery route, another driver lost control on a frozen highway. I barely had time to react before metal crashed against metal. The world spun violently, glass exploded around me, and then everything went silent except for distant sirens. I remember thinking about Hannah waiting at home and praying I would see her again. When I opened my eyes, I was lying inside a crowded emergency room. Machines beeped steadily while doctors and nurses moved with practiced urgency. My breathing hurt. Every movement felt like fire. Then one physician stepped beside my bed, carefully examining my injuries with remarkable calm. At first I only noticed the confidence in her voice. Then she looked directly into my face. Time stopped. The years disappeared behind those familiar brown eyes. Rachel. She had become exactly the kind of person everyone believed she would become, a compassionate emergency physician whose steady hands brought hope into one of the hardest places on earth. She professionally continued treating my injuries without allowing emotion to interrupt her work. Only after the nurses stepped away did she quietly lean closer, her voice barely louder than a whisper. She softly asked whether I remembered her. Those 4 simple words carried 20 years of unfinished memories. I smiled through the pain because forgetting had never been possible. I admitted that I had remembered her far more often than I had ever admitted to anyone. She smiled gently, but there was sadness behind her eyes. She confessed that she had recognized me the moment my chart appeared and that she had spent years wondering where life had taken the quiet boy who always held doors open for everyone else and once secretly left grocery money inside another student's backpack after learning his family couldn't afford food. I had never known she witnessed that moment. During the days I remained in the hospital, Rachel checked on me whenever her schedule allowed. We talked about life instead of the past. She shared that she had married young but lost her husband in military service overseas. They never had children. After burying herself in medicine for years, she had convinced herself that some chapters were never meant to reopen. I shared stories about Grace, about Hannah, and about learning to survive grief without letting it turn into bitterness. There was never jealousy, only respect for the people we had loved and lost. One afternoon Rachel quietly admitted something that completely changed how I remembered high school. She confessed that she had always noticed me sitting alone during lunch. She remembered every small act of kindness I thought no one had seen. She admitted she had hoped I might one day ask her to the senior dance, but graduation came and went without either of us finding the courage. Two frightened teenagers had allowed silence to decide their future. Instead of feeling regret, I felt peace. Life had taken us exactly where we needed to go. We had both experienced love, devastating loss, sacrifice, and growth. Those years had shaped us into people capable of understanding each other's pain without needing many words. Months after my recovery, Rachel met Hannah. Watching my daughter laugh with someone who carried such quiet compassion filled me with unexpected gratitude. Rachel never tried to replace Grace. She honored her memory while becoming a trusted friend to both of us. Slowly, friendship became companionship, and companionship eventually became something neither of us had expected to find again. It wasn't built on teenage fantasies anymore. It was built on scars, honesty, patience, and the understanding that broken hearts can still make room for hope. Sometimes I still think about that emergency room. A terrible accident became the doorway to a second chance neither of us could have imagined. The girl I had been too afraid to speak to became the woman who reminded me that life can return blessings long after we stop searching for them. Not every first love becomes a forever love, but sometimes the kindness you quietly plant in someone else's life waits years before finding its way back to you. Before this story ends, tell us in the comments, have you ever met someone from your past who changed your life all over again? If this story touched your heart and reminded you that kindness, love, and second chances are never truly lost, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to help more people discover stories that keep hope alive.